Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if everything you've ever learned about happiness is wrong? What if being positive, successful, and motivated all the time is the very thing that's making you miserable? Sounds extreme, right? But that's exactly what this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, claims. I'm going to take you deep into this brutally honest, often hilarious, and sometimes shocking book, breaking down not just the ideas, but the psychology, real-life examples, and hidden layers behind it. This isn't a motivational speech. This is a real conversation about pain, responsibility, meaning, and the power of choosing what actually deserves your energy. Let's begin. Mark Manson is not your typical self-help guru. He's not here to make you feel good. He's here to tell you the truth. A truth most people are too scared or too polite to say out loud. That truth? Life is hard. You're not special. You're going to die, and you can't care about everything. But instead of seeing that as depressing, Mark shows how that's actually liberating. Who is Mark Manson? Before writing this best-selling book, Mark Manson was a blogger. Not a therapist, not a psychologist, just someone who wrote raw, honest blogs about what he was learning in life. His writing style is what made him viral. Direct, funny, rude at times, but always real. In 2015, one of his articles titled "The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck" blew up. Millions of readers shared it. Why? Because it said what many were thinking but couldn't express. That trying to be positive all the time is toxic. That failure is not your enemy. That caring too much about everything is ruining your peace. From that article came this book, and now we begin Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Don't Try. Mark opens the book with a quote written on the tombstone of Charles Bukowski, a famous poet known for his brutal honesty. Don't try. Wait, what? Isn't effort everything? Isn't trying the secret to success? Mark flips the script. He explains that trying too hard to be something you're not is the very thing that keeps you stuck. When we keep trying to be more confident, more happy, more popular, we reinforce a subtle message to ourselves. I'm not enough. It's not that effort is bad. It's that inauthentic effort fueled by insecurity leads to anxiety, burnout, and failure. Bukowski became a successful writer not because he tried to be one, but because he wrote despite being drunk, depressed, and broke. He accepted who he was and still showed up. The real lesson? Stop chasing the image. Start facing the truth. Let me pause here and ask you, what part of your life are you trying to fix instead of facing? Is it your looks, your income, your relationship status? Mark would say, maybe you need to stop trying so hard and start being more honest with yourself. Chapter 2, Happiness is a Problem. Now comes a truth that most self-help books never admit. Happiness is a problem. That's right. According to Mark, pain is part of life. Struggle is not optional. Even when you succeed, you'll face new problems. The question is not, how do I avoid problems? It's, what problems am I willing to solve? See, happiness comes not from avoiding problems, but from solving them. Think about it. You get fit. Now you have the problem of maintaining your body. You get into a relationship. Now you have the problem of keeping love alive. You grow your business. Now you deal with the problem of leading others. So, what determines your happiness isn't the absence of problems. It's the quality of your problems. That's what Mark calls the feedback loop from hell. When we're unhappy about being unhappy, anxious about being anxious, guilty about feeling guilty. It's emotional layering, and it traps us in self-hate. Instead, the book urges us to accept that life is pain, struggle is meaningful, and peace comes from choosing the right kind of suffering. Let me ask you, are you trying to be happy by avoiding pain? If so, maybe the answer isn't to run from pain, but to choose better pain. Let's pause and absorb what we've covered so far. Mark Manson says, trying too hard to feel good is the problem. Real self-worth comes from acceptance, not from chasing success. Life is full of problems, and solving meaningful ones brings joy. You don't need to fix everything. You need to choose wisely what matters by saying, it's not about not giving a fuck at all. It's about being selective with your energy, time, and emotions. We learned something counterintuitive but powerful. You can't avoid pain. You just have to choose which pain is worth it. Now we dig deeper. We explore your identity, your values, and the lies we tell ourselves. Are you ready to question everything you thought made you special? Because Hour 2 starts with a reality check. Chapter 3. You are not special. Hook. Have you ever been told you're unique, you're extraordinary, you can achieve anything? Well, Mark Manson is here to tell you, you're not that special. It sounds harsh, right? But here's the deeper point. We live in a world of overinflated self-esteem. Instagram, TikTok, and motivational speakers tell us we're destined for greatness, we're entitled to happiness, we deserve to win. But what happens when reality doesn't match that hype? We feel like failures, not because we are, but because our expectations were unrealistic. Mark calls it the exceptionalism delusion. It's the lie that in order to matter, we must be extraordinary. But here's the truth. Most people are average at most things, and that's okay. Mark's not saying you can't do great things. He's saying that you don't have to be exceptional to live a meaningful life. When you stop chasing being special, you start focusing on being real. And that's where growth begins. Rhetorical question. What if the pressure to be amazing is the very thing stopping you from improving? Chapter 4. The Value of Suffering. This chapter asks a powerful question. What do you value, and is it helping or hurting you? Mark says that our suffering is directly related to our values. If your value is, I must always be liked, you'll suffer when someone disapproves. I must always win, you'll suffer when you lose once. I must always be right, you'll suffer every time you learn. So the real question is, are your values making your life better or worse? Mark divides values into two types. Good values, reality-based, socially constructive, controllable. Examples, honesty, growth, humility. Bad values, superstitious, socially destructive, uncontrollable. Examples, being famous, always feeling good, never failing. He argues that changing your life starts with changing your values. Here's a relatable example. Imagine someone obsessed with always being admired. They'll avoid saying the truth, avoid conflict, maybe even lie, just to stay liked. But inside, they're miserable. Now imagine someone who values honesty instead. They still want to be liked, sure, but not at the cost of lying. They'll speak their truth. And even if they lose followers, they gain something deeper, peace. So the question becomes, what do you truly value, and is it worth the pain it brings? Chapter 5. You are always choosing. Hook. Here's a truth bomb. You're not always in control of what happens to you, but you're always in control of how you respond. Even if something isn't your fault, you are still responsible for your reaction. Mark says this over and over. Responsibility and fault are not the same thing. Think about that. If someone crashes into your car, that's not your fault. But fixing your car, dealing with insurance, that's still your responsibility. If your parents mistreated you, not your fault. But healing, growing, and breaking the cycle, that's on you. This is the foundation of true power. Not blaming, not playing victim, but owning your response to reality. Here's what most people miss. When you give away responsibility, you also give away control. You become helpless, angry, bitter. But when you take responsibility, even for painful things, you reclaim power. That doesn't mean you caused it. It just means you're choosing how to face it. Mark's message is clear. Responsibility equals freedom, because when you own your choices, you own your life. Ask yourself, where in life are you waiting for someone else to change? Instead of choosing how to respond. Recap and insight. We've now covered the middle arc of this book, the identity transformation zone. Here are your takeaways. You're not special, and that's good. You're free to just be. The pain in your life comes from your values, so choose values that empower you. You are responsible for your reactions, even when life isn't fair. Mark Manson is teaching emotional maturity. Not hype, not fantasy, but grounded, brutally honest self-awareness. He's not trying to make you feel good. He's trying to make you better. And now in the next hour, we explore failure, truth, rejection, and the price of growth. We dismantled the illusion of being special, examined how our values shape our suffering, and explored how personal responsibility equals freedom. Now we dive into something even more uncomfortable, the art of failing. Because here's the paradox. The path to growth runs through rejection, discomfort, and pain. Let's begin. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I. Hook. What if everything you believe about yourself, the world, and success is wrong? Scary thought, right? But here's the idea. Growth only happens when you challenge your own beliefs. Mark says that humans love certainty. We cling to our ideas about religion, politics, love, success, like they are facts. But most of the time, they're just stories we tell ourselves. Here's the truth. Certainty is the enemy of growth. Why? Because when you believe you already know everything, you stop learning. Mark introduces the Manson law of avoidance, which says, the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it. Let's say you see yourself as a nice person. If someone tells you you've been selfish, you'll get defensive. Not because they're wrong, but because that challenges your identity. Here's the problem. If your identity is too rigid, you'll avoid truth and therefore avoid growth. Mark suggests we replace I'm right with I might be wrong. Let's test this. I want to understand more than I want to win. That's what real confidence looks like. The willingness to be uncertain. Ask yourself, what belief are you clinging to just because it makes you feel secure? Failure is the way forward. We live in a culture obsessed with winning. But what if failure is the very engine of success? Mark tells a story of David Mustaine, the guitarist kicked out of Metallica. He went on to create the band Megadeth, selling over 25 million records. Sounds like a win, right? But Mustaine still considers himself a failure because Metallica became bigger. That's the problem. If your metric for success is always comparing yourself to others, you will always feel like a failure. Mark flips the idea of failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the path to it. He introduces the idea of action, inspiration, motivation. Most people wait to feel inspired before they act, but action actually comes first, then inspiration follows. Let's say you don't feel motivated to write. Mark's advice? Start writing anyway. Even bad writing creates momentum. That momentum leads to better ideas, and those ideas lead to motivation. Action isn't just the result of motivation, it's the cause. He also talks about his own blog failures. He wrote dozens of terrible posts, had few readers, made no money for years. But those failures taught him what worked and built the skills that made him successful. Takeaway: embrace failure. Stop trying to be perfect. Just start moving, because you can't learn from a book what you can only learn by doing. Ask yourself, what have you been avoiding because you're scared to fail? Chapter 8, the importance of saying no. If you say yes to everything, you're not being kind. You're being afraid. This chapter is about boundaries. Mark says, you can't care about everything, so you must learn what to say no to. Saying no isn't about being rude. It's about protecting your values. He gives examples. If you value honesty, you'll say no to lying, even if it costs a job or friendship. If you value growth, you'll say no to comfort, even if it scares you. Every yes must be earned. And in relationships, boundaries are even more important. Mark emphasizes, you are responsible for your problems, and your partner is responsible for theirs. That's how healthy relationships work. Not by fixing each other, but by supporting each other while owning your own stuff. Codependency happens when we take responsibility for other people's emotions. Healthy love happens when we respect each other's autonomy. Here's a powerful line. Love is not about giving a fuck about everything your partner gives a fuck about. It's about mutual respect, not control. Ask yourself, where in your life are you saying yes just to avoid conflict? It might be time to practice saying no with love and clarity. Pause and reflect. Let's pause and summarize this intense chapter block. Here's what Mark Manson has drilled into us. You're wrong about a lot, and that's okay. Admitting it is step one to growing. Failure is the only way forward. Don't wait to feel ready. Start, and clarity will follow. Boundaries matter. Saying no is how you honor your values and protect your energy. By now, you may have noticed a pattern. This book is not about not caring. It's about choosing what matters and ruthlessly cutting out the rest. And now we move to the final, most profound part of the book. It's about death, legacy, and the ultimate meaning of giving a fuck when everything else fades. You've challenged your beliefs, reframed pain, accepted responsibility, and faced rejection. But now it's time to confront the ultimate fear, the one we all try to ignore. death. Mark Manson ends his book not with answers, but with the deepest question of all: what will you give a fuck about when everything ends? Chapter 9, and then you die. Here's a truth we all share. One day, you and I will die. The question is, will it matter that we lived? This chapter is a meditation on mortality, but not in a sad way, in a liberating way. Because when you accept death, you become free to live fully. Mark says, the only thing that can give life meaning is the fact that it ends. Let's break that down. If you had infinite time, nothing would matter. You could waste years, delay everything, never take risks. But because your time is limited, every moment becomes precious. This is why death is not just the end, it's the lens through which life gains value. The legacy question. Mark challenges us to ask, what will you leave behind? What values will live on after you're gone? How do you want to be remembered? He tells the story of a friend who died young in a hiking accident. That death shook him deeply, not because it was unfair, but because it revealed how fragile and finite everything is. The fear of death is really the fear of having lived a meaningless life. This leads to the biggest question of all. What are the few things in life that are truly worth giving a fuck about? And the answer is different for each of us, but it always comes back to this: love, growth, contribution, connection. The denial of death. Mark references a powerful book called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. It argues that most of what we do, chasing fame, money, legacy, is an unconscious attempt to defeat death. We want to feel important. We want to be remembered. We want to leave a mark so death doesn't win. But this often makes us chase the wrong things. Fame over truth, approval over integrity, success over love. Manson's message is radical. You don't need to be extraordinary. You don't need to change the world. You just need to be real and give a fuck about things that matter. Mark's final message. Let's tie this all together. This book is not about apathy. It's about focus. Mark Manson isn't saying don't care about anything. He's saying care about less, but care deeper. That's the art. Let go of superficial drama. Accept responsibility for your choices. Define your values consciously. Say no to things that waste your energy. Say yes to growth, love, and meaning. And above all, live in a way that when death comes, you can say, I gave a fuck about the right things. Now that you've listened to this deep dive, ask yourself, what are you currently giving a fuck about? Is it really worth it? If not, what are you willing to stop caring about starting today? Remember, the power isn't in giving zero fucks. The power is in giving them only where they count. So go live fully, speak truthfully, love deeply, fail forward, say no boldly, and die having given a fuck about the right things. If this message shook something inside you, if it made you pause, think, or even get a little uncomfortable, that means you're growing. And growth is rare these days. So if you're someone who values real talk over sugar-coated hype, if you're chasing truth, not trends, then hit that subscribe button. Because here, we don't give a fuck about going viral. We care about going deep. And if that's your vibe, welcome home.